thanks for joining me for today's webinar. Today we'll be covering how to accelerate automation of browser tests. We're mostly going to be focusing on JavaScript with a bit of TypeScript. We'll be looking at using Cucumber and Selenium in order to create these tests. So my name's Mark. I'm from a company called Test Evolve. At Test Evolve, we provide tools and people to help organizations test their software. The whole webinar should take about an hour, and we call this one From Zero to Hero. You may remember, or people who've been subscribed for a while may remember, that we did one about 18 months ago called the same thing. So this is a bit of an update, but we'll also take this opportunity to show you some changes in our product to help accelerate the automation of browser tests. So yeah, let's take a look at what's on the agenda. We'll start by taking a look at what we need to install on our local machine in order to set up a test automation project. We'll walk through creating a project using Test Evolve Flare, and as part of any project that's unpacked to start with, we'll get some example tests. We'll look at running those tests locally. Then we'll look at requirements. So as a tester in an organization, you may have a way of writing requirements. What we'll be looking at today is BDD. So that stands for Behavioral Driven Development. And it's a very set way of defining requirements so that all stakeholders involved, so developers, testers, project managers, they all have an understanding of what the requirement is, and testers have an idea of what to test to. So we'll be looking at the best practices in that department. And we'll look at a practical example of how to convert something that you've been given into a good BDD automated scenario. So some of the low-code features that we have, we'll start by recording a browser test using Test Evolve Flare. We'll then have a look at the code that's generated underneath. Low-code solutions are good, but you still want to have an understanding of what the code is underneath so that you're able to maintain it. We'll have a look at what is different in TypeScript compared to the JavaScript code that's generated. And we'll look at how best to refactor and maintain that code. So, using the page object model, for example, we'll take a look at that. Then we'll move on to scaling the test suites. So we have a really good feature in Flare that allows you to quickly build jobs. And these jobs can be cross-browser, cross-device, accessibility, security, performance tests. But basically building these jobs that you can then execute in your CI/CD pipeline to quickly scale your test suite. So from a functional regression test, you've then got all of these options that you can kick off, nightly or every regression cycle that you need to. And finally, we'll look at reporting. So you probably have lots of different stakeholders in your organization. You want different levels of reporting for different people. So we'll explore the options that we have there, and we'll explore Test Evolve Halo, which is our reporting platform. Really, really powerful tool to kind of share real-time information on the quality of your software. So that's quite a lot to get through in just an hour, so let's dive in. The best place to start with Test Evolve is to navigate to our documentation site. So this is testevolve.github.io, and it provides comprehensive information about the three parts of the Test Evolve product suite. So we have Spark, which is the Ruby gem or the JavaScript package that basically powers the automation. We have Flare, which is our studio application, and I'll give you a tour of that in a minute. And then we have Halo, which is the reporting platform, and I'll show you that towards the end of this webinar. You can find pretty much everything on the Test Evolve documentation site. It's got guides, it's got code examples, tutorials, everything you'd need to start your automation journey, and give you as much support as we can. So today we're going to look at the quick start guide. So click on that in the top left-hand corner. As I say, you can dive deep into the documentation on each of the products, but what we're looking at today is setting up the machine. So if we were creating a Ruby project, we'd need to have Ruby installed. Because we're doing a JavaScript or a TypeScript project, then we'll need to have Node.js installed. So if I click on the Node.js link here, and then the first line is install Node here. So I'll click on that link and it takes us to nodejs.org. On the top, we've got the download option. So let's click on that. And that takes us to a page where we configure exactly what we want to download. So we can select the version, we can select the operating system we're downloading it for, and some optional libraries as well. So we recommend that you use the LTS version, which is the long-term support version. Newer versions of Node.js may have some quirks that aren't quite there yet, so we always recommend LTS, and TestEvolve Spark will always support the LTS version. So we're using macOS for this demo, and we're going to use NPM. So you could select a different package manager, but because we're working with Flare today, we want to use NPM. So I download the macOS installer. I'd go through the steps there to install Node.js. And once that's complete, the way we can find out that it's been successful is to open a terminal. And then we can type in node-v. And that'll give us, version 22. So I've got Node installed. NPM is now packaged with Node. So npm-v, just to make sure that's installed. Great, 10.9. NPM is a package manager that will help organize which JavaScript libraries need to be installed for Spark. So yeah, I confirmed that I've got my prerequisites installed. Next thing I need to do then is to go to the TestEvolve sign up screen. So testevolve.io/signup. We're going to create an organization. So the first thing I need to provide is an organization ID. This basically becomes your TestEvolve domain. So if I was to use example, then my domain would be example.testevolve.io. And when I navigated to that URL, I'd be able to see all of the projects and all of the data that's been pushed, all of the reporting for the organization. So also provide an organization name, provide a company email address, hit the confirm button, and once the organization is created, you'll receive an email. Click the link in the email and you'll be able to set your password and sign in. Once you're signed in, you'd see a page very similar to this. So this is the TestEvolve kind of projects page where you can create a new project, or you can look at the reports in an existing project. But what we're looking at today is downloading Flare to get started. So top right hand corner, and we click on the downloads page. And we can see that the latest version of Flare there is 1.1.1. Click on this and it allows us to download Flare for our particular operating system. We can also download it from testevolve.com. So navigate to testevolve.com, go to resources and downloads. And then once we're here, we can just select the operating system to download for. So I've previously downloaded Flare. So let's open that up. So this is the Flare sign-in screen. So what I'm going to do is enter my credentials. So you'd enter your credentials that you just put into create the organization. Okay, so the next step is to either open or create a project. So for this webinar, we're going to create a brand new project. Let me call it webinar demo as the project name. I'll select a directory on my machine to install it to. And then we've got a project language selector. So the options are currently Ruby, JavaScript, and TypeScript. Python will be added very soon. But for today's webinar, we're going to choose TypeScript here. So when I click create, it's going to verify that the dependencies I've installed are okay. It's going to create the project, download some examples, install all of the packages that are required to perform the automation. And then we get through to the homepage. So this is Flare homepage. Well, let's do a quick tour of this. We've got the project name at the top, webinar demo. We've got the libraries, packages, languages that are installed and their versions at the top here. That helps us support you. So we can see the Spark version that's been installed is 2025. We've got a project summary at the top here. So there are 3 features. We've got 11 scenarios and 8 steps. And I'll talk through how Cucumber divides features, scenarios, and steps in a minute. We've also got the concept of tags and jobs. Tags I'll get to later, but jobs, we can see there are 6 of them and they're listed on the left-hand side here. So 6 jobs. The top one here is test examples. So we can see a summary here of what the job does. It's a functional test performed against a local environment. It's a browser test and we can see that it's using Chrome. We've also got a Windows version, so if you're creating a project for the first time on Windows, you'll be able to run this one instead of the top one. And then we've also got a couple of other jobs. We've got rerun. So rerun will execute the test that failed in your previous test run, which I think is a really cool feature. So yeah, say we ran test examples, there were 4 tests that failed, you can click rerun and it will rerun those 4 tests. So yeah, everything is now installed on your machine to enable test automation. So why don't we kick off one of these jobs? Test examples, so we know it's going to run in Chrome. So once I click play on that job, we'll get navigated to the result screen. We'll see the console as it's kicking off the tests, and there we go. So this is Chrome. It's navigated to our element capture page, which is basically a sandbox to show off the automation capabilities. But as you can see, it's filling out various parts of the forms. It's checking checkboxes, clicking buttons, making sure that Spark can automate every part of this page. Because, you know, in your e-commerce site, whatever it is that you're automating, you'll need to be able to deal with various components. So that's what the example tests are demonstrating. The browsers are actually opening on my other screen at the moment, but we've got 2 browsers running these tests at the moment. So we do have the ability to run tests in parallel, and this is just doing it in 2 browsers at the moment, but you can do it on as many as your machine would be able to handle. So I'm currently just using 2. They're still running away, filling out forms, and it should be finished any second now. There we go. So the test run's finished. We can see 10 scenarios, 10 passed. If I click on to Spark report at the top here, this gives you kind of a basic report. So this is, we can see here we've got 10 passed, none failed. There are some other statuses that could have been the case as well, but the example tests here have all passed. And then we can see that how the scenarios are written. This is a kind of a basic example of how they're written. So browser-based test is the name of the feature. We've got a scenario here, page load and element interact. So that's just kind of an example of what it's doing. And then the key bit here is these keywords. So given and then. There's actually another one which isn't part of any of these scenarios, which is when. But the structure of a test, an automated test in TestFile Spark, is given, and then you perform certain actions that will set up the test. When, which is an action that you aim to produce a result, and then, which is verifying the result of that test. And you can see here, so this is just a basic report, but we maintain the traceability to that, and that these steps have passed. So let's dive a little bit further into that. If we click on the tests link here, then we can see we've got our 3 features, and we've got a deep dive into each of these features. So this feature is browser-based tests that we just looked at. This is a scenario. These are the other scenarios, and you can see there's various things like given I visit a web page, then I interact with page elements, very basic stuff. But every test will look like this, and we'll show you how to make good quality requirements. So let's switch back over to a slide just to look through what is BDD. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail about BDD. We do actually have another webinar. If you go to the Test Evolve YouTube channel, you'll be able to search for BDD on there. And my colleague James has done an excellent deep dive into the best quality BDD requirements and why and how they're used. But for the purpose of this webinar and getting started with writing good quality automation test scenarios, then we just need to have a quick look at BDD. So what is it? So we're looking at a consistent format in our requirements and a way of collaborating with developers, testers, business stakeholders. We actually call them the 3 amigos, and you can have 3 amigo sessions where the 3 groups, developers, testers, and business stakeholders, sit down together to flesh out the requirements in a common language. So as you've already seen, the common language is given, when, then. As I said, given sets up the test. When, some action is performed, then is the verification steps of what you're expected to see. Most good BDD scenarios will be succinct, but you can, if you are finding that you're given step is becoming increasingly long, or you're providing too many details in one step, you can use other keywords. So there's and there's also but to make the it still makes sense in the English language. So given I do something and something else is also the case, that's perfectly acceptable. But we're trying to keep it as succinct as possible, because each requirement should be a requirement for a specific feature, not lots and lots of things that you're testing at the same time. So when BDD works really well, it can actually become a living documentation tool. So as you add these new requirements or these new scenarios to your automation pack, and you execute that scenario and that test passes, that's describing the features in your system. So you get a build to an environment, you run the tests. Every passing test is a description of how the system is working. So that's really useful, and being able to share that with the business. Any questions about how something is supposed to behave, you've got that documentation. We can also use it for traceability. So in terms of reporting, you want to be able to know that, okay, the when step is the bit that failed. So the given when then will be preserved all the way through in any test evolved project. And you'll see it in your reports. So the test executes, it fails on the when step. You look at what's failed, and it might be when I've selected to add to cart. Then you know that part of the system isn't working. So traceability very important when it comes to BDD. The whole point is that the requirements become the executable test scenarios. Let's have a look at a couple of other things. So the requirement should focus on behavior, not implementation detail. So you don't want to be talking about elements of the user interface, for example. So when I click the add to cart button, that's not what we're going for, because you may find that eventually it's not an add to cart button, or something changes on the UI. You don't want your requirement to become out of date. So when I add the item to cart is a perfectly acceptable way of describing the behavior. We want it to be business readable, so nothing vague. You should use business language. So if the business calls it a cart, for example, I'm using e-commerce examples here, but if they call it a cart rather than a basket or some other formal language, then that should be represented in your BDD requirements. So nothing vague. You don't want to say then the test is successful. That may well be true, and in your code underneath everything is passing, but that doesn't help anyone know exactly what this test is doing or what the requirement actually was. So a valid then step could be then the order confirmation page is displayed. So we've got some best practices at the bottom here. Each scenario should be able to run on its own, so all the steps should be there to create the preconditions for it, perform the action, and then verify that the expected output is there. Specific, so one behavior per scenario. That's a very useful rule to go by. You don't want to be testing lots and lots of things in the same scenario. Complete, so it'll include all relevant actions. I think we've covered that. Expressive clearly shows the intent of the feature, and I think we'll have a look at a good example of that in a second. And testable, so obviously it needs to be a requirement that can be verified with automated acceptance tests. So we've got a couple of examples on the right hand side here. The top one I consider bad because it is talking about the user interface. It says when the user clicks the checkout button, and it's also described in a way that the business wouldn't really care about. So the fact that it is redirecting to checkout.jsp, that obviously means something to a tester, a developer. It makes a lot of sense, but for a business user, why does it matter that it's that URL? The second bad example we've got is when I've seen this quite a lot actually in people, organizations who tried to implement behavior-driven development. And what they'll do is they'll turn it into a list of manual test steps. So the scenario being user checks out, then they'll say, given the user is on the home page and the user clicks on a product, and the user selects a quantity of 2, and the user presses the add to cart button. And in their mind, what they're doing is they're creating reusable steps, which sounds like a good idea in principle, but really at this level, we don't care about reusable code. This is all about the language being understandable between different stakeholders. and we don't care about being able to reuse steps. Naturally, we will be able to, but the code underneath will be much more reusable, and we want to focus on readability at this level. So lastly, I've got a kind of a good example at the bottom. So a registered user checks out with items in cart. So given a logged in user has items in their cart, when they proceed to check out, then they're taken to the checkout page with their cart contents preserved. And this is key. That's a good example of a requirement that the business would have. It's understandable by developers. It's understandable by testers. And the business would be able to see this test passing as meaning that requirement is met, and that a logged in user will have the cart contents preserved when they navigate to the checkout page. Okay, so let's take a look at how we can convert a BDD requirement into an automated browser test. To do that, let's flip back over to Flare. Great. And on the left-hand side, under the Develop menu, let's select Test Recorder. So the Test Recorder is a low-code solution to recording BDD tests and browser automation. So there are no-code solutions out there, but we believe that it's important for testers to be able to program, and it actually makes you a better tester. Being able to maintain code makes you a better tester. So let's imagine that we've been hired by Amazon, and on our first day we've been asked to automate adding a product to a cart as a simple test. So the first thing we do in Test Recorder is we'd create a feature. So create feature button there, and let's call this Amazon cart flow. Next up, we need to add a scenario. So a good scenario name for this would be add product to cart. And then we're into the steps. So I'm going to say, given I'm a guest user on the Amazon UK site. So that's our setup step. And then we need our action steps. So when I search for a product, and then our verification step, which is a then. Then I can add the product to my cart. All right, so very simple, very readable. And you may have noticed that the browser has opened up on the right-hand side. So the next step is to select the test that the step that I want to record against. So in this case, the first one makes sense. Given I'm a guest user on the Amazon UK site. So if I toggle record on in the top right-hand corner here, to fulfill that step, all we need to do is go to a URL. So let's do amazon.co.uk. Brilliant. Okay, so we've gone to the Amazon UK website. You can see here that it's generated the code underneath. So await test evolve.browser.goto and then the URL. And so that's the JavaScript that's been generated underneath that we can see here. So that step is now satisfied. I am a guest user. I'm on the Amazon UK site. So we will go to the next step. When I search for a product, so let's click into the search bar as a user would, and let's search for something. I'm going to search for my favorite band, Thrice. There we go. Great. Okay, so we've got a search results page. Let's click on the search results. So let's just go for the top album here. They're all good albums. Great. Okay, so we're on the PDP or product detail page now. So we can go on to record the final step. So then I can add the product to my cart. So select that. Step is not yet defined. So how do we satisfy this one? Well, we go to the add to basket button. So click on add to basket. It's recorded that. And then we need a way of verifying that the test is successful. So how can I tell that I've added the product to my cart? I could verify that the subtotals changed. I could verify various things, but I think the one that stands out to me is the proceed to checkout button. That would only appear if the item had successfully been added. So we can right click on that, We can verify, we've got a number of verifications we could perform. Let's just verify that it's displayed. So we're verifying that the checkout button is displayed. Okay, so that's basically the recorded test now. So I'm going to switch off record. So in the given step, given I'm a guest user, we go to the site. When I search for a product, we're clicking into the text field. You can see testevolve.browser.text field, and then we've got an identifier. So it's found that the most unique thing about this text field is an ID called 2tab search text box. Then we're setting the text of that to be thrice, and then we're submitting by clicking on that button. So yeah, we're then clicking on an image, which is on the PDP. The PLP, the product listing page, to select the particular album that we want. And then on the then step, we're clicking the add to cart button to satisfy I can add the product to my cart. And then we're verifying that the element is displayed. And the code is pretty interesting for this one. So if the submit is not displayed, so it's got an exclamation mark here, which is JavaScript for not, then it's going to throw an error. So that's the basic code there. So let's take a look at the code in an IDE now. So this IDE is called WebStorm from JetBrains, but really you can use any IDE. This one's particularly good for JavaScript and TypeScript, but you can use Visual Code or any preference that you may have, or your company, your organization may have. But we see the project hierarchy in the left hand side here. So we've got environments, we've got our node modules that have been installed when we created the project. So let's look in the features directory. We can see that we've had an Amazon cart flow feature generated. And when we look into this, we can see our feature, the scenario that we recorded. So we can actually click through and have a look at the code underneath these steps now. So it should look very familiar because it was what was displayed in the test recorder. But this is how a step definition is defined. So we've got different layers to a Cucumber project. At the top level, we've got the feature level. And then this is the step definition level where all the steps are defined. The step definitions are kept in the step definitions folder. And this one is called Amazon Cart Flow Steps.ts. What the recorder has also done is it's imported any functions from libraries that are needed. So for the given when then steps to work, they need to be imported from Cucumber, and for test evolve commands on the browser to work, that need to be imported from test evolve Spark. Okay, so let's flip back to Flare and let's actually execute the test. The best way to run just a single test is probably to tag it. So if I collapse the features here, you can see all my features are here. A couple of them are tagged. So browser-based test is tagged with examples. Browser-based test 2 also tagged with examples. And our feature doesn't have a tag yet. So if I click on the tags button, I can add something unique that will mean I can reference it and run it by itself. So let's just call this demo. Let's tag it as demo. So do that to create a new tag and then click Save Changes. So now Amazon Cart Flow feature has a demo tag. In order to run it, we should make a new job. So the concept of jobs I touched on earlier, but the idea is you create a job and then you can run your test in a particular way. So test examples is run against a local environment. It's a functional test run on Chrome, and it uses the tag examples to decide what test to run. It's run on 2 threads and it's got 0 retries. So threads, as I mentioned before, you may want to execute your tests in parallel. You could have 8 different browsers running the test at the same time. There's obviously things that may limit that, environment performance and that kind of thing. You don't want to start load testing your environment. But 2 threads have been specified for this particular test here. And retries is how many times, if a test fails, how many times it will retry before deciding that that test has actually failed. I'm not a big fan personally of setting this because I think any test that fails needs the tester's attention. But if you've got a known issue, a flaky test environment performance-wise, and you're satisfied that retrying the test would actually, say that that requirement is passing, then by all means set retries. So that's the basic makeup of a job. It's configuration, it's tags, and it's how exactly do I want to run this test. So let's create one now for this Amazon cart flow. So the Amazon cart flow is included as one of the tests that are going to be executed at the moment, but we want it to be the only test that's executed. So in this create job modal, I'll just include the tag demo. Another way I could have done it was excluding all the other tags, examples and example API test, and that would have excluded all the others. But I've just included the one demo tag, and that means that the Amazon cart flow is going to be the one that's executed. Okay, so we selected the test. We'll go to configuration, and configuration is all about what we want to achieve as, what configuration do we want to execute this test with. So for the purpose of this, it's going to be a functional test. And we're picking a test type. So this is going to be in a browser. Where do we want to run it? So we've got the local machine. We could use one of the third parties. Browser Stack's particularly good. But we've got some other options here as well. I'm just going to run it on my local machine. We could run it as a desktop test or a mobile emulation test. I just want to run it as a desktop test for now. And we can run it in several different browsers locally. I'm going to run it on Chrome. And then we've got some really low-level stuff that we could configure here if we wanted. We could change the size of the browser as the test running. I want it to be maximized, so that's fine. And closing browser or reusing the same browser or both. I think if we had more than one test, it would reuse the browser and then close the browser in the test. We can also set some default timeouts and that kind of thing, but I won't change any of that. That's not what we're looking at the moment. So the last one is reporting. I won't set any, but we will get some failure screenshots, and I've set the logging severity there to info rather than debug, so the logs will be a bit clearer. But no need to set any reporting for this. So I'm going to name my job. Let's call this Amazon Flow. I won't give it a description, but let's just select an environment. I don't actually have any environments set up properly at the moment, but we'll just set an environment. One thread and 0 retries. So when I save that job, it'll appear in my list of jobs. And let's kick that job off. So run. So that's navigated us straight to the results page. And then we can see Chrome browser is opening, navigating to Amazon, searching for thrice, and then adding the CD to basket. Great, and we can see that one scenario, one passed. So that's it. We've automated a simple BDD requirement into a browser test, and it's passing. Moving back over to our step definition file, there's a couple of things that stand out to me in this when step that we can change in order to make the test more maintainable in the future. So to start with, we're defining that the user or the automation should click into the search text box and then enter the text into the search text box. But that means we're defining the text field twice. So same ID, same text field, and then performing different actions on it. So the problem with that is that when this code base grows, someone might make a change. Say the front end changes the ID to be search box, which is completely plausible, or they update the identifier. I've changed it in one place. I haven't changed it in the other place. To make it more maintainable, ideally what we'd have is just one place to change the identifier of any particular element. And the way to do that in a browser test automation project is to use what's called the page object model. And that's basically for every page or every section, depending on how much functionality is in a section on a page. You should create a page class. and define all of your elements for that page on that page class. So let's switch over to Flare again. And what we'll do is on the left hand side here, we'll click on Element Collector. So the Element Collector is a quick way of gathering those elements for each of the pages. We've got an example here, which is home page. So this is in the example tests. And you can see we've got on this element capture page, we've got all of our elements defined already. So the email field, for example, we've got the date and week selectors. All of them have data test tags, and we've stored them all on a page file. So let's create our own example. Click on the button there to create a page. So let's call this element capture. So that's created our new page, our page class as well under the hood. Let's click into there. Similar to recording in the test recorder, we can enable collect mode, top right hand corner here. And then let's say I want to collect the example button. So I click on that. This gives us the option to name it. So I'm going to call it example button. Everything should have a name that's, understandable by anyone who's used the application. And then we've got a number of attributes that we could choose between in order to identify this. So we've got the ID, which is example button. We've got data test, which is also example button. We could use the class, which is example button class. But the key here is to pick something that is unique and is unlikely to change. Class in an application, say something with React, classes can change quite regularly. Things like the href could change depending on how the system's updated, but data test tags and identifiers, these are the key ones. Name, potentially, they're very static attributes. So let's use data test. And there we go. So we've saved the example button with a data test of example button, and that's stored in our page class. So let's flip back over to the IDE. And on the left hand side here, into the support menu, and then we've got pages. So we can see that the element capture.ts file has been created. Let's go into that. So this is the bare bones of a page object class. So the class is called element capture. It extends, and this is a page object. Page object is imported from Spark. So you don't need to worry too much about any of that. It's all controlled under the hood by the element collector. So there's a couple of things. We've got an initialize box block here. So when the page object is created for the first time, this initialize block will run, and it will define the button on the page. So this.example button equals this.button. So this is basically just referring to the page object class in this case. So we're setting example button on this page to be a button with an identifier of data test example button. So very simple way of defining it here. That's what it would be in JavaScript. We also have in TypeScript the addition of the type. So at the top of the page object file, we'll define the type of example button to be button. And button is something that we can import from browser element. Again, all of this is handled by the element collector. So it's not something you need to worry about until you're actually maintaining the code. So a couple more examples. Let's keep collect mode on. Let's click on a link and name it example link. Again, we've got some options. XPath would be a good example of something that can change over time, because the page, although this particular XPath is pretty good because it's looking at an ID of form and then choosing the second link in there. But if someone added another link, then this path would immediately become invalid. So it's always best to use name, data test, ID, something that's unique. If you're in an agile workplace, then you can potentially just talk to your developers, ask them to add data test tags, and then in the next push of code, you'll have these unique attributes that you can latch onto for your test automation. There's nothing wrong with adding unique identifiers, changing the DOM, and having the ability to make your tests more robust. So let's create that one. There you go, color. So let's call this color selector. And again, we'll select the ID for that one. And let's do one more. So radio option. Radio option 1. And I'm guessing the value would be value 1. Yeah, there we go. So let's just use value for a different example. Oh, no numbers. Radio option 1. Okay, and flipping back to the IDE once more. So it's added all of these. It's imported all of the types for us. But we can see example link is an A. An A is an anchor. Color selector is an input. Radio option 1 is an input. And then, as you can see, ID, value. Data test is kind of something that a developer has put in to make this particular page easier. But ID and value, those will be way more common, so you're more likely to come across those. Okay, good. Let's flip back over to Flare then, and let's record a new feature. But this time what we'll do is we'll build in the page object model from the start. So let's click on create feature. I think this time I'm going to use the Lego website. So very much the same. The feature will be called Lego cart flow, and let's say add product to cart. Let's do the same test. Given I am on the Lego website, when I add a Lego product to my cart, then the item is successfully added to my cart. Okay, so exactly the same flow, but this time we're going to do it on the Lego site. And I'll draw your attention to this selector here. At the moment it's saying select a page, but we have a list of pages that we can select here. So okay, the first step, given I'm on the Lego website, let's click record and we'll go to lego.com. Great. So the next step is to add a Lego product to my cart. So we're going to do the same kind of steps as last time, but this time we're going to add it to a page. So this is the Lego homepage. You can see there's a blinking blue light saying that a page hasn't actually been selected at this point. So let's create a new page and we'll call it simply Lego homepage. Okay, and then we can select that from our drop-down list. And then any action we record will be recorded to that page. So let's search for Lord of the Rings. And we can already see in the code generated on the left-hand side here that it's using the Lego homepage. The search input has been defined once and it's using the name there. Click and then set. So now we're actually on a different page. So this would be the product listing page. So let's create a new page, Lego listing page, and switch over to that. All right, so let's select Baradur. There we go. So Lego listing page, we've got the product was called product leaf image 1, and then we're clicking on it. And then the last thing would be to add to the bag. And again, this is another page. So let's create a new page, which is Lego PDP, product detail page. Select that from our list. And then we're just simply going to click on the add to bag at that point. Right, so the last step would be to verify that the item is successfully added to the cart. So let's click on that. We're still on the Lego PDP. It's just a pop-up on top of it. So you could potentially create a new page for this modal. But I think, for the purpose of this demo, we're okay. So let's verify that the View My Bag button exists. Great. So you can see there, Lego PDP, View My Bag button exists. So it's using that page. Let's flip back to the IDE then. And we'll check out our Lego cart flow steps. So this is basically now reading like a manual testing script. So we go to the URL in the browser. We then click on the search input, entering the text, clicking on the product leaf image, and then adding to cart. And then we're also performing the verification. So on the Lego PDP page, the View My Bag button exists, and then we're proving that if it doesn't exist, then we're saying View My Bag button was not displayed on the page before timeout. And if we have a look in our pages directory as well, so we can see Lego homepage just has the one input, search input, and we're able to refer to that in our steps. So Lego homepage.searchInput.click. Same with the listing page, and the same with the product detail page. So the add to cart button and the view my bag button are both saved with data test tags, interestingly. So Lego have built-in help probably for their automation engineers to automate the site. Okay. So at this point we have a functional test, a browser automation test. Let's use the Amazon flow as an example for now. Currently we've got one job that runs it against Chrome on the local machine. So let's see how we can scale that and make the most use out of our regression test. So I'll click on view all jobs here. We've got the Amazon flow job at the bottom here. Let's create a new job. So again, we want to just run the Amazon cart flow. So I'll select demo as the tag. It's just that one feature and scenario. Heading over to configuration. This time we'll use browser local desktop, but this time we'll run it against Firefox. So we'll bring the first cross-browser use of this test. So Firefox is what we'll start with. I won't change any of the settings at the bottom, and we won't worry about any of these reporting options for now. So let's give it a name. Let's go Amazon Firefox. No description, and let's leave it just running on one thread with no retries for now. So I'll save the job. We've got the Amazon flow, which is Chrome. We've got the Amazon Firefox. So let's kick off that Amazon Firefox flow. So it takes us to the results screen straight away, and kicks off test, opens Firefox, great. Searches for thrice, goes to the PDP and adds to basket. Great, so we can see one test run, one test passed. So we've added one cross-browser test to our regression pack. Another way we can quickly increase the value of our single automated test is to add audit checks as we navigate through our page. So we've got a user flow, very common user flow. We need to make sure that the site, all the URLs that we go to are accessible. Accessibility is becoming a massive deal worldwide. There's legislation in the United States and more recently in the European Union. If you're selling into those territories, you need to be compliant and have your sites be accessible to a certain level. My colleague James has done a fantastic webinar on that, deep diving into the European Accessibility Act and what it means for companies and how you can test your compliance. So it's worth checking that out. In terms of our automated test, if we go back to the test recorder and dig down on our Amazon cart flow, as we were going through and recording, if we had the record option on, what you can do is right click on any page and then add an audit check. We also do visual checks, visual regression checks, but we're going to focus on the audit check for now. So let's have a look under the hood, what that looks like. So in our given step, we go to the amazon.co.uk website. So the next step is we want to perform an audit check. So the way we do that is await test evolve .audit, and it requires some kind of unique label for the audit. So this is basically just the homepage of Amazon. So we're going to audit check the homepage once we navigated to the website. So we could also do that with the cart page, the PDP, the PLP, everywhere we visited throughout the site. We can add these audit checks in. I'm just going to add the one for now. Let's go back over to Flare. The next thing we want to do is create a job. So we've got our Chrome and we've got our Firefox functional tests. So now let's create an audit test. Again, we're including just the demo test, the Amazon cart flow. But under configuration, this time we're going to select audits. We're going to select an Axe audit and browser, local, desktop, and we're going to run this audit against Chrome. So all the options at the bottom can stay, but this time we're going to call it Amazon Axe checks. No description, and let's save that job. So we've got Amazon Axe checks here, and let's run the test. Okay, so you know the drill by now. We get taken to the results page. It's going to open Chrome. You might notice it taking slightly longer. It's still very quick, but there is an additional check in there now. So the automated test has passed as expected, but we now have an Axe report. So let's click on the report there. We can see that it's actually failed because of accessibility violations. So on the amazon.co.uk webpage, under the given step, we can see we've got our label here, homepage. Obviously, if you'd added audit checks to other pages, you'd have labeled them differently. But we can see at the summary level, we've got 2 critical, 1 serious, 6 moderate, and 1 minor accessibility violation. So let's dig into the report. We can expand here. We can see the 2 criticals are at the top here, and they seem to be centered around ARIA attributes. So ARIA attributes help screen readers read for people with read the website content for people with impairments that require that. So we've got a links out to the Axe guide. We've got a description. We've actually got the source and instructions on how to fix the issue. All of this is provided in just the default report. Scrolling down, we can see there's quite a few minor ones or instances of this particular minor. What's this? This is alt tags should not be repeated. So there you go. So immediately you could start flagging these things to your developers, mentioning to your project manager that, okay, these pages aren't accessible. And you're immediately providing more value from your automated testing. So let's go back to the home page. Let's add another variation then on an audit check. So if we go to jobs again, let's create a new job. Same deal again, just the Amazon cart flow, but this time we're going to perform an audit with Lighthouse. So Lighthouse is a popular tool that measures the performance, accessibility, looks at SEO on your website. Lots of developers will already be very familiar with this tool, so when you're including these checks as part of your automated test, they'll kind of have an understanding of the issues you're raising. So we're performing it against Chrome again. I'm just going to save the job as Amazon Lighthouse. Okay, so click on save, and let's run that as well. So same as before, it will open a Chrome browser, but this time instead of performing an Axe audit check, it's going to be performing an audit check using Lighthouse. It does it slightly differently. It opens it in a new tab, and it will adjust the screen size. It will look at mobile viewports, basically judging the performance, the SEO, and the accessibility of each of the pages. So then the functional test continues and completes successfully, but we now have a Lighthouse report at the top here. So we can see that one or more of the minimum thresholds were not met. So that's why the test has been marked as failed. I think when we configured the job, all of these were set to 90, so only accessibility passed our threshold in order to make the test pass. So that's why it's failed. Again, we've got the label of homepage. We've got performance score of 49, which I guess Amazon is a very heavy site, so that's not too surprising. But it's very good from an accessibility point of view. So we can also drill down into this report. Very similar to the standard Lighthouse report. We have all the images. We've got details on diagnostics, so things that can be raised that okay, so excessive DOM size, obviously you're going to get that on Amazon, but there's details there. So you can start raising the most critical things with your developers when navigating through sites and performing audit checks like this. So accessibility, again, it's found that although it's very good, the ARIA attributes are not quite what they should be. And again, we've got the alt attributes being flagged as well. So the accessibility is showing. We've also got best practices and SEO that we can raise. But again, it's just about providing the most value from a single automated test. When you've got a regression pack and you're touching all areas of the site, this kind of stuff becomes invaluable because you're raising critical issues with your developers and very quickly. And just, you don't have to write completely new tests. You can use your existing tests. Okay. Let's create one more example job then. So I'll click on create a job. We're gonna just include the Amazon cart flow again. In configuration, this is just going to be a basic Chrome functional test. But under reporting, this time we're going to output to our cloud reporting solution because we want to share the results of our automated tests with a wide audience. So you want the developers to be able to access the information, you want project managers, you want stakeholders to be aware of the great work you're doing. So if we click on Halo, you can see we need to provide a project ID, a label for our test run, and an API key. So the label, let's start there. I'm just going to put in webinar demo. And in terms of API key and project ID, what we need to do is go to Halo. So logging in as we saw earlier. I've got a project here called webinar. So I'll click through to that. In the top left-hand corner, we can see that the project ID is 19. So I'll go back to Flare and let's put in the project ID of 19. Then we need an API key. So on the left-hand side here, we have project settings. So click through there and an API keys tab. So in the API keys tab, you can create a new API key. I created one earlier, but when you submit a name for your API key, then it will provide it with you and then you won't be able to find it again in Halo. So you need to store it in your project or in a secrets file, depending on your CI/CD needs. Okay, so I've got my API key from earlier, so let me put that into Flare. Okay, so we've got our label, we've got our API key, we've got our project ID. So let's just name this Amazon Halo. And we'll save the job. All right, so at the bottom here, let me just kick that off straight away. All right, so this must be becoming very familiar to you now, but we're just running the functional test. Yep, in Chrome. So as soon as that's finished, we can flip over back into Halo. And let's go to the home page and the unassigned labels page. And here we go. So we can see that our webinar demo label got pushed through. We can see that it was 100% passing. We can see that it was run against Chrome and on my Mac. So at this high level, you kind of got an idea of how the test went. We can click through and dive down a bit deeper. So yeah, again, 100% passing. We can see that it took 7.5 seconds to perform that test. We've got our run properties at the top here. So the Spark version, the Node version, the browser version that we're using, even the viewport size that the test was executed against, all that information is here. And if we push the test a few more times, we'd have a history with a run trend as well. We can also deep dive in. So if I click on the Amazon cart flow feature, then we can see that traceability. We can see the given step passed, the when step passed, the then step passed. If it had failed, we'd be able to see one of these have a red cross here, and we'd be able to see a screenshot from the failure. So yeah, that's how we push the data to Halo. Let's go back to the home screen. Okay, and probably the last thing that I can show you, because I did promise 0 to hero in 60 minutes, but let's take a look at the kind of extent of the reporting that's available in Halo. So I'll switch projects to the Test Evolve project. This is a very mature project. We do use Test Evolve to test all of our Test Evolve products. So if you look on the left-hand side here, we've got a kind of an organized data project hierarchy. We've decided to go with different products, but you could equally, if your organization has a QA environment, a UAT environment, and a pre-prod environment, you could divide up your data that way, and then users can click through and find that information. So if you're looking to share information about the QA environment with a particular person in your organization, you can do that with your organized data. We also have the concept of releases. So if you're working towards a release and you want all of your data in one place for that release, then you can create a release, add the labels that we talked about earlier, and this is the kind of thing that you get. So this is for an upcoming release of Flare. You may have noticed that the Flare is looking very different in this webinar to how the recent releases have looked. That's because we've done a complete overhaul. It's now completely accessible, and we've added a lot of new features as well. So that release is upcoming, but as you can see, as an overview level here, we've still got some issues to work out. So that will be released very soon. But this is the kind of detail that we go into. We've got our functional tests here. We've got an exploratory testing session, or 2 sessions with 18 entries and 7 bugs raised. We've got our manual accessibility testing here. We've got our axe checks in dark and light mode. All of that information is presented to the user, and whatever users you want to share that information with. It could be other members of your testing team, or it could be stakeholders that are interested in what you're up to. So the last thing I can show you as well is under the settings menu for the project, we've got email reports. So for those managers or high-level stakeholders who don't have time to drill into your reporting, drill down through all the layers, you can send summary reports and to specific people. You can do it daily, weekly, or monthly. You can enter the recipients here, and you can only include the labels that they'll be interested in. So that could be the label that we specified earlier, webinar demo. You could just show the results of that, or just include the labels for a particular release that's coming up. So yeah, there really is a lot to dig into in Halo, and we don't have the time in this particular webinar, but we do have other webinars on that. Or if you'd like to see more, just let us know. We're happy to show it off. So let's do a quick review of what we've covered in the webinar. So we looked at good quality BDD requirements, and we imported one of those requirements into Flare and recorded a test against it. We organized the code base. We introduced a page object model and showed how we can record our tests with that in mind to make it scalable. And we created a number of jobs for our test suite. These are CI/CD ready jobs, so you just need to provide the information to your infra team and use our documentation to create a Jenkins job or a GitHub Actions job, whatever you need, wherever you want to run your tests, but you can also run them on your local machine. We showed how to create custom reports for stakeholders. So it's important that you've created this regression test, and then you keep adding regression tests to it. You build up a critical regression pack. You need to share the results of those with the stakeholders in your organization, specifically or particularly the developers, because they need to know on a build's gone to an environment, the tests run, it takes 10 minutes, but the results are in real time in Halo, and the developers know immediately if there's an issue that they've introduced. And all the reporting includes traceability to the original requirements, so business stakeholders will understand what's working, what's not in their system. So I mean, if you follow the steps in this webinar, then I think you'll have created a fantastic critical regression pack. You'll have added value with it. You identify cross-browser issues, accessibility issues, performance issues. And there's a lot more to our TestFile product suite. So we can do API testing, there's mobile app automation, till system automation. We've got webinars on all of these things. But I think the most important thing is there's nothing that can't be automated in a typical e-commerce platform. We can do omni-channel flows all with that BDD wrapper. Okay, so that's it for today's webinar. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you do have any more questions or want to know more or want to know about how to apply this solution to your specific organization, to any needs you have specifically, then please feel free to email us. You can contact us at info@testvalve.com, or you can contact me personally, mark.sweetlove@testvalve.com. Or if you just want some more general information, then head to testvalve.com or our documentation at testvalve.github.io. So yeah, again, thanks for your time, and see you soon.